Hello. We're here on behalf of AT&T Business to talk about the customer experience. And what we're going to do is a little bit of a glance in the rearview mirror, since it's been about over a year since the global pandemic, or at least where we started to actually feel the shifts and changes. And how did business adapt to provide great customer experience over the past year? And how did they actually put technology to work to keep customers engaged, both digitally and in real life? And most importantly, what should we be doing next to make sure customers keep coming back? Joining me for this incredible conversation are Alicia Dietsch, SVP Business Marketing at AT&T Business, and Kevin Jackson, CEO of GlobalNet. Alicia, let's kick this off. What types of innovation have you seen in customer experience in the past year, specifically related to the pandemic?
Well, I think the truth of the matter is what the pandemic did was accelerate innovation that had been happening for years from a technology perspective. It just moved some of those innovations from nice to have to absolute essentials. So maybe a couple of examples. Touchless payment is a great one. It's not that touchless payment didn't exist before, but when you have multiple options, touchless payment is nice. When you're in the middle of a pandemic and you need to keep your customers safe and protected, it's essential. Thermal imaging is another great example of technology that had existed before, whether it be in the public safety space, whether it be in transportation. It was relatively widespread, but now its use in determining when people's temperatures are higher than normal to detect fever, that's another great example. And then, maybe my personal favorite, I would not have survived the last year without this, is curbside pickup. Curbside pickup existed before, but when you think about all of the technology that really comes into play, from IoT sensors on store shelves to apps that customers are using, to intelligent video sensors that might actually be observing those pickup lanes to make sure adequate social distancing, it all works together in a completely new and different way to fundamentally change that experience. I mean, I think it really has been about blending that physical and digital experience in an entirely different way to serve entirely new needs and problems.
I couldn't agree with you more, Alicia. And Kevin, I was wondering, even in your business, I think what Alicia is saying is something that we knew, right, before the pandemic. Right. But to your point, Alicia, we weren't using it in the way that we're using it now. And I think some of the things that we've discovered, Kevin, isn't it that we now know that it can be done, it works, and it's better?
Yeah, something I've heard over and over again, everybody has now brought, these remote collaborations like Zoom and WebEx. It's part of our everyday life. And people keep saying, wow, I didn't know this was so easy. If I had known, I would have done it earlier. The fear of technology basically got steamrolled over because people had to work almost immediately. You had to go home, and not just the employees, but the customers as well. And we always said that change was constant, but it has accelerated to the point now that it's light speed, and technology is just a critical component of everything we do now. The virtual world is now a necessary part of everyday life, and we've gotten used to it over the past year. Mm-hmm. So that demand for choice is critical.
Well, and I think too oh, sorry. This is the beauty of the digital world, Kevin. A little bit of a delay. So apologies for stepping on you there. Keep rolling. Keep it going. Preach it, brother.
No, it's just that this physical world, in the physical world, this choice, as Alicia was talking about, curbside delivery and home delivery. But in the virtual world, it's the ability to communicate by phone or by chatbot or by web or by virtual reality. So things are changing really fast.
Yeah.
And Kevin, if I could just hop in here for a second. Sorry, Tamara, I'm just all over the place. But you talking about the variety of means, and it's all about choice. To me, it's actually about all of those things coming together to enable that choice. So it's not about, do I choose physical or do I choose virtual? It's about being able to blend those experiences real time in whatever way makes sense to that user, to that customer. So to your point, whether it be I start by engaging with somebody online, perhaps in a chat because I have some specific questions, and maybe I don't even know it, but I'm actually engaging with a chat bot. They follow up with an email, but that email hasn't actually answered my question. Now I want to call in and talk to a live person who's going to help me. And increasingly, maybe that live person who's helping me, that whole record of my transaction, my question, my inquiry could follow me to that proprietor's retail store as well. So to me, it's funny that my personal expectations have changed so dramatically during the course of the pandemic in terms of what I expect to see.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that puts a great amount of pressure on the business because all those different channels of interaction create huge amounts of data. And the data is coming in different data types. It's video, it's audio, it's text, right? And if you want to improve your customer experience, the business has to be able to adapt and accept all those different communications forms and then normalize them so that the customer service rep can have it consolidated there in front of them so that they could actually meet the now enhanced expectation of the customer. So this huge amount of data really forces the business to understand the importance of things like, we're talking about delayed. What's the importance of latency? How is that going to affect the interaction? What about bandwidth? Can you deal with jerky video on a little cell phone, smartphone? All these things involve the quick adoption, and understanding of technology.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, we're going to put a pin in that tech for a minute here because you just brought something up critically important, Kevin, and that's that bandwidth issue. And I know, Alicia, you've got some things to say about that. But I wanted to, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. This is a good conversation. Ooh, let the dogs out. Ooh. I thought before we go into the tech, I really wanted to pull out something salient, probably on everybody's mind, and that is the challenges, right? So this past year was particularly challenging for all businesses and industries, but especially for those who have those brick and mortar physical locations. So what were the lessons learned in the brick and mortar space? So who wants to jump on that?
Yeah, I'll sort of take that. From my point of view, it's the flexibility that organizations really needed to take on board. I mean, earlier I said that in the physical world, flexibility was being able to do curbside, whereas in the virtual world, it's your ability to communicate. Well, that difference is really going away. And if you are good in meeting the customer where they are and meeting their expectations, then you start this positive feedback loop that gives that personalization. I mean, today is all about personalization to an audience of one. The days of mass selling and mass media are gone away. It has to be one to one, and it's really has been for organizations that need to rely on a physical location, just this immediate transition to the virtual world has been just dramatic, and actually innovative. People have thought about new ways. I mean, Chick-fil-A, for instance, nobody goes in, but they have these long lines that move really fast because of the way they've changed their business processes. Other organizations looked at what they were doing for years and redesigned their business processes to take advantage and leverage the virtual world. And this is going to really, and already has, accelerated and changed businesses. Dynamic responses are really expected by customers. So that customer experience is really about rapid interaction in near real time.
You talked about Chick-fil-A, Kevin. One of my favorite examples of this complete and utter business model transformation from a physical, what was always traditionally a very physically space-oriented kind of business, is Carvana. Now, think about buying a used car. And now the fact that we can do that entirely virtually without ever having been to a showroom or physically in the presence of that car. I think it speaks to the immense power of digital in the context of both reinvention and customer experience.
Absolutely. And, I've also been looking here at some of the comments we have in our LinkedIn live stream, which is the cool part about live, right? And that is, someone typed in here, I think that was Anne or Ann, but talking about really with this vaccine rollout. And Anne, I'm sure you know that the three of us here are not experts on the vaccine rollout, although I would say we're excited by what it means to have the vaccine rollout. And at least from what I've been seeing and keeping track of through the programs, where I am over at Harvard, is that it looks like at least summertime, everyone will have access, but I see it rolling out even sooner. I know that in Colorado specifically, by Friday, everyone 50 and over is eligible, which is, I think it's happening faster, which does then play into this part about us being able to continue getting out there more confidently and making sure that everybody stays safe. So thanks for that question. But I think that's a great question to talk about when we look at, those next steps, right? And one of the biggest topics, most salient, this is such a great lead-in on our minds as we eventually move into a post-pandemic reality, is that remote and hybrid workspace. And certainly we're going to see more of that flexibility as people have access to vaccines. And how can businesses support? Now, here's the piece, right? We like this flexibility that we've been exposed to. We didn't know it would work, and it has for some. And so how do we support this remote and hybrid workforce while still preserving that customer experience that we've been talking about here? Alicia, could you kick us off with this?
Sure. No surprise, I'm sure. Here at AT&T, we talk a lot about connecting, about connections. And those are often technology connections, but they're equally about human connection, right? And one of the things I think we have all learned over the course of the past year is that the human connection that technology can enable is so crucial, not only to our day-to-day work relationships, but to the relationships we have with our customers and the customer experience we create as well. And I guess I would say that my first advice, and just pardon me because I have to say it, is that as businesses seek to create those long-standing human, albeit different, but human connections, think about the kind of business grade technology you need, right? Whether you are a marketer like me who's working from home and collaborating on the types of products and offers that our customers may need, or if you are, for example, supporting a big call center environment, which actually now we can support completely virtually so that every individual rep feels as if they are part of that centralized team that might have once existed in a physical space. Now that can all be handled remotely. So I think the first advice I would offer is think carefully about the technology and ensuring that whatever choice you make, it is business grade, because your customers deserve a business grade experience. That's what you're seeking to create for them. And then look for ways to surround that technology with practices that bring the people forward. That's the hard part of this, right? Is that balance between people and technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to sort of expand on a couple of things that you said with respect to relationships. From a business point of view, the relationship between the enterprise and the employee is really changing. The employee doesn't expect to be with a company for 10, 15 years, 30 years and get the gold watch. We've now transitioned to a gig economy where everyone is a consultant. They bring their skills and their capabilities to the enterprise, and the enterprises are bidding for their talent. This means that the organizations need to have the technology to be able to take these individuals with the talent and plug them right in to the organization's enterprises. And these people aren't going to leave home to come into the office. They're going to stay at home. They're used to being able to work from anywhere. And that requires the high grade technology that's needed for today's modern business. The other thing is that businesses are now building ecosystems with other businesses. Their business models and their business processes have been digitized, and they connect with other business processes via APIs. And these APIs transfer data, they interact with your gig workers, and they also interact with your customers. So your platform has to be able to connect high bandwidth. You need to be able to manage the APIs as you interact with your customers, your gig workers, your employees, and other businesses. And this is really a whole new world. And as you say, Alicia, you have to have top grade technology. You have to have top grade network connectivity. And you have to make sure that your business is digitized as we transition into this 5G world. So this is critical.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting when I hear you both talk about this, and it's something that I never even thought about until this past year, and that is there is no, I think, greater legacy organization than giant educational institutions. And they are businesses. They have research labs, and they're partnered with private companies to do research, and they're interconnected between other universities. And what I've realized this year living into being a graduate student is that I could not have continued my graduate education had it not been for connectivity. it just wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
You think just 10 years ago, none of us would have been able to do the remote work that we've done, with our work. And so I think sometimes we forget about all the educational institutions, and certainly any parents out there, I'm one, we also have kids that had to do school from home. And what would we do if we didn't have them continuing with school? I mean, that's a nightmare to give a child an entire year off school to try getting them back into it. And you lose knowledge. So I think it's been really important to consider that this connectivity, this human connection that you mentioned, Alicia, and this continued flow that you mentioned, Kevin, could not have been achieved without connectivity. And I think sometimes we take it for granted and we don't appreciate it until it's gone. We don't appreciate it until there's a power outage, and then we run scrambling. And that's when you really do appreciate that our entire life is interwoven with connectivity. And at this point, we really can't live without it. So I wanted to bring us, sorry, I'm gonna mic drop that. We can't live without it. Let's look ahead. Would you guys like to journey with me into the future? So really, I like to look at not only where we've been, but where we're going. Where are we headed? And when I look ahead, I wanted to ask both of you, what do you think tech businesses should be looking out for in the future to really level up this customer experience that we're talking about?
Well, I can start, Kevin, if you'd like. I actually want to play off something you were talking about earlier, which is the immense amount of data companies now have. And it's not just their own data, it's our data, it's customer data. So I think one of the very foundational focus areas needs to actually be on digital trust and the security and the protection of that data. In order to create exceptional experiences, our customers need to trust us with that information that in some cases is incredibly intimate to them, right? Depending upon what kind of business or industry you happen to be in. So I think one of the underappreciated aspects from a technological perspective as it pertains to the customer experience is security and how we secure that data. So that's one for me. The second for me is 5G. Now, for anybody who doesn't live in my world, you may have heard many of us in the industry talking about 3G, 4G, 5G. Here's what you really need to know when you think about 5G from a wireless perspective is immense speed, immense resiliency, and amazing experiences that can therefore be created for our employees and for our customers. We are in such the early stages of 5G adoption that, we have all of these amazing proof of concepts that we work on almost in a sandbox. And some of the most amazing really draw right back to the customer experience. So whether it is customers who now have the opportunity to serve content, perhaps Warner Media content, in a restaurant to their end user customers. Perhaps they are gamifying parts of their business. Or one of my personal favorites, we have this great fan experience at AT&T Stadium, which happens to be where the Cowboys play, of course. And with 5G, you can actually put yourself right in and among those players. You do it remotely. It is a completely touchless virtual experience, but you have this amazing memento of your time at AT&T Stadium because there you are with the players. So all of these things enabled by 5G. So to me, the future, let's make sure it's secure so we create that digital trust, and then let's break it open with the potential of 5G.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And something I want to bring up, I've been talking about remote this and remote that Remote is going away. It's no longer going to be a word. It's not going to have meaning anymore. We are all merged into a global society. This is the first event that everyone has gone through simultaneously, that we can all communicate in real time about our experiences. The global society is here. There's no such thing as being remote from anything, because we're remote from everywhere all the time. That's what it means to be in a virtual world that we're living in today.
Kevin, does that mean, Kevin,
yes.
I got to interrupt you because you're making me think, does that mean we don't need to say www before our web address?
Right, exactly. And because remote is no longer a real concept, the importance of personal data, managing personal data, becomes so huge in our life. The future is where we all take hold of our own personal data, because it's an asset that we manage, just like money. And organizations will have to ask us for our data and ensure that we provide the right approvals for how they use our data. And there's going to be a monetization of data, not just in the businesses, but from individuals. There are companies right now that really allow individuals to sell their data to organizations. That in and of itself is going to be part of the new customer experience. How does this organization use my data? How do they let me manage my data? What visibility do they give to me with respect to how they use my data? So the future is going to be data driven, both by the enterprises and by individuals. And personal control and management of your information are going to be huge.
You know, and what's interesting too, Kevin, to that point, is the differences in the generational cohorts as to what they're comfortable with as far as giving away of their data. And,
right.
You know, the younger, digital native is like, hey, I want personalization, baby, give it to me, and I'll give you whatever you want for that. So I do think it is different depending on the individual. And what you had to say, Alicia, is people can opt in or out. It's kind of up to them, which will lead me into another question for you. And this is going to be our final question, which I'm so bummed about because this has been such a juicy conversation. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
And for all of you putting comments in the comment stream, I've been reading them. They're so interesting, and I wish I could pull them all in, but we might be here for an hour. In fact, we might have to do this and do it for an hour instead of
Yeah, it's way too short.
Because we have some great conversations over here in the chat. And so I just wanted to acknowledge all of you because I am reading them going, yes, yes, yes. But how can brands use technology to actually promote customer loyalty, right? Because in the end, what do we want? We want our customers to have a good experience so they keep coming back. And how do we keep people coming back? Alicia, you want to start with this one?
Yeah, so look, I am in an industry that is, think about wireless for a moment, and we all have wireless devices, more than we can count at this point. And short of new wireless users being born, our job is to try to win new subscribers back and forth, right? So I believe the difference absolutely has to come in the quality of your product and your offering. But increasingly, it equally has to come from the quality of the experience you create for your user, right? The simplicity, how streamlined it is, how thoughtful we are about putting the customer at the center of what we choose to do. Whether it be simple things like ensuring as you sell technology, we are always giving our customers, our existing customers, our very best deals, not just our brand new acquisition customers. That's one example. But also great examples around digitally, how we can support them, how we can give them access to resources they need, access to people they need, that human connection when they want it. I think that's where the difference is really going to come in. And I think that's what long-standing relationships are built on. And we think of ourselves as a relationship business.
Right. And just as a comment, I would have to say that the foundation of a customer experience is trust. So whatever organizations do, no matter what product you are providing or what service you're providing, job one is building and establishing and maintaining trust with your customer. If you don't have trust, there is no, viable customer experience. So make that number one. Trust begins with communications and relationships. So,
Tamara, I don't know if we've lost your audio.
Oh, yes, we did lose my audio because I took a drink of water. Okay, this is life on. Okay, this is life on video.
Life on live.
Yeah, Kevin and I are looking at each other like, what the heck is happening here?
What is the most used phrase this past year on video conferencing? You're mute. I think you're muted.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, I just did that on purpose, y'all. But what I was saying, Alicia, is that I really loved what you had to say as you ended your conversation. And I didn't want to cut you off, Kevin, so I waited. But it was a mic drop moment. And I really love that you said that AT&T Business is a relationship company. And the reason I like that is that we hear that a lot, right? Because everyone in marketing knows that relationships are important. The customer experience is important, customer journey, blah, 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 right? We've all heard it before. But where the rubber meets the road is the experience of it. Mm-hmm. You can tell someone's mission statement is just a mission statement until you've had the experience of working with the brand. And to me, that is extraordinary. And to hold that as your vision, that this company is a relationship company, is huge. And no bigger calling did you have than during this past year, during the pandemic, because we know it's been excruciatingly hard on people. Mental health is so important and not quite talked about much, but think about how mental health is impacted by connectivity, by being able to just the difference that you make as a business or a brand in making someone's experience good that day. You don't know the personal wars they're fighting, the struggles, the tensions, and just making that one little frictionless experience, that connection is so important. And so, I'm just so glad you said that out loud. And I hope somebody types it in the chat so that it's retweeted. You need a quote card. That's right. You need a quote card, Alicia.
Hey, can we give a shout out to FirstNet by AT&T? Because that's what you're talking about, being able to be there when you need it. And that's what FirstNet has done to everyone across the nation.
Well, thank you for that, Kevin. We are quite proud of our relationship with the FirstNet Authority and that network that we have built with and for our first responders. So for those that don't know what FirstNet is, it is a bespoke network that we have created for first responders and public safety in partnership with the FirstNet Authority that offers availability of that network regardless of the circumstance. So it is always available. And that is particularly important in crisis situations that so many of our first responders and public safety personnel find themselves in. But I tend to agree with you. It is one of those examples of AT&T. I'm a long-standing AT&T-er. I've spent my whole career here. I'm not one of those folks who left after 10 years. I've got the watch, actually. But I always say, AT&T is there not just for the ordinary moments, but for the extraordinary moments. And when you talk about a relationship business, that's really at the heart of it.
Well, you're speaking my language. And I don't know if you guys know, but way back in my past life, I was a nurse in the 1980s and 90s, but a helicopter trauma nurse, life flight trauma, and ICU. Wow. So let me tell you, you touch my heart and soul with that, because unless you work in that first responder field, you really don't have an understanding of how every second matters. It really does. So you had me again. Alicia. I'm so bummed I'm tasked with the responsibility of wrapping up this conversation, and I'm so bummed about it. And for all of you that are joining us, it's not my fault. I have to do this, but I just want to do it again.
Let's do this again.
There's so much here. It's a lot of depth and a lot of meaning. And these days, if conversations don't hold meaning and depth, they don't hold my attention. And so talk about life reevaluation after COVID, right? But I really just wanted to thank you, Kevin. You're wonderful as always. It's always a pleasure, buddy.
Thank you for inviting me.
And Alicia, so wonderful. So many mic drop moments. And, thank you to those that joined us. Hey, without an audience, we'd have just had a conversation between the three of us. So thank you for everyone who's joined, or any of you who are tuning in afterwards. We do appreciate you. It matters. You matter. And thank you to AT&T Business for making this happen. If you didn't sponsor this conversation, we wouldn't get to have it. So my thanks for this. And thank you to everyone who engaged with us here. I loved your comments. They're so deep and entertaining and enjoyable and meaningful. And if you liked the discussion today, you absolutely have to follow AT&T Business on LinkedIn to keep up with what's happening, cutting edge stuff here. And hey, Alicia, how can we turn into, don't you guys do a monthly Twitter chat, the Biz Talks? How can we tune in and what's happening next?
We do. Our very next one is Wednesday, April 14th at 12 p.m. Central. I hope a lot of you will join us. And we're going to talk about digitally transforming SMBs in 2021. So again, a really rich topic. So I hope a lot can join us. And let me just add my thanks, Tamara, to you. Such a great host, the host with the most. And Kevin, it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much. This was great.
Thank you.